Hello, welcome to Galactic Initiative. I'm your host, Jeff. On short notice, halfway across the galaxy, David and Sean are with me. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Welcome, Sean.
Hello, my friend.
Let's get to it. According to a Lucasfilm spokesperson, Gina Carano is no longer a Disney employee. Variety broke the news on Wednesday, February 10th. Social media activity was cited as the reason. Quote, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable, end quote. Did Gina's actions warrant her firing?
I honestly, I'm not exactly sure. One of the things I do know, when you are asked by an employer to stop doing something that is harmful to the brand, it's probably in your best interest to stop. I'm sure she signed some type of a morality clause, and the tweets that she sent out were controversial. Some might not agree, some might agree. According to Disney, it sounds like, they gave her opportunity after opportunity, and she kept pushing the envelope, according to Disney. They finally had enough. The problem, though, there are other Disney employees spewing things out on Twitter that have not been disciplined. So it is definitely some type of a double standard.
So I would say no, she does not deserve to be fired. And I would think, and I'm also going to say that the Disney's comment in their press release about her denigrating people's culture and etc. Is a lie. What she did in that particular tweet that got her fired was basically say that people like her feel a certain level of persecution and exclusion. I don't think that denigrates anybody's culture. It's a social observation. So Disney's already on thin ice for the reason why they did it. Yeah, you have the right to free speech, but there's also consequences. Absolutely. However, do the consequences of free speech in this particular case really warrant the action that was taken? Like, are the consequences worthy of the quote-unquote crime? And I'm not saying that people, again, I'm not saying that you can say whatever you want. I can't go out on my Facebook page and talk about trade secrets or software development that I'm involved in, things like that. I'd lose my job, and that's understandable. But we live in a society right now where people are afraid of speech. There's not a lot of critical thinking that goes on anymore, and they're afraid of differing opinions. You know, we as a society benefit from more free speech over less free speech.
Should she have been quote unquote canceled? I don't think so. She has her First Amendment rights. She should be able to speak her mind. But, you know, in any job has its moral obligation. I mean, you can't push offensive stuff and not expect to be disciplined. I think my bigger issue is Twitter. I mean, I am not a fan of Twitter. I have no desire to use Twitter. There's just too many potential consequences to that.
Without having access to any of the documentation that Gina Carano has signed, without really knowing anything about what goes on behind the walls of Lucasfilm, and this is all speculation, we don't know what she was told. We don't know particular clauses in her employment contract with Disney and with her representation company, her agents. I think this is all being conveniently glossed over, because there are plenty of people involved in, and I'm not just talking about Disney company, but actually people involved with the Mandalorian show, like Pedro Pascal, who make equally awkward and terrible statements on Twitter, But because his awkward and terrible statements are of one political leaning, he is allowed to thrive and flourish in the Disney company. And because Gina Carano's awkward and terrible statements are of another political philosophy, she has lost her job. She has lost her employment. And the young lady who is the host of the High Republic show saying things that are reprehensible. When people complained about that and said, hey, we don't think that's very, very nice of her, Disney turned around and made this big statement on their Twitter page about how Disney stands for no bullying and we support all these people. If they really were fair and equitable, Pedro Pascal would have lost his job. This young lady would have lost her job. Chuck Wendig, the other, who's the guy that writes all the books? Pablo Hidalgo. He would have lost his job. A number of people in Star Wars would have been run off. We're in a weird area where we're talking about freedom of speech, and we're also talking about employer-employee relationships and employer-employee rights.
Do you agree with that, David? Do you think that the reason the double standard exists or is being shown, do you think it's based on politics?
I honestly would hope it wasn't based off of politics, but I mean, pretty much everything nowadays is, so it would not shock me. And I honestly think that they're going to have a huge issue with this. I'm interested to see that there are reports they have already rehired her or are going to rehire her. I'm not sure if I'm Gina Carano that I want to come back, especially since there is a quote-unquote double standard without getting paid big bucks.
The majority of the power brokers in Hollywood who live in gated communities lecturing the rest of the country on what it is they should be doing or how they should be feeling or whatnot. And there is no consequence as long as they're lecturing in the right way. This hypocrisy is maddening. And our social media masters are operating on one side of the political spectrum, and they are starting to curb the conversation, and they're starting to limit access. It's terrible. We are trying to express our beliefs and opinions, and we are also trying to learn from other people who have different beliefs and opinions from us, right? And so to shut off all of that, it's censorship. And now you've also pushed somebody into a corner where they don't feel like they can actually come, have a conversation with you. They have to defend themselves, or there's this fight or flight thing.
At this point, for public figures, why not forego social media? Do the benefits really outweigh the costs?
Daisy Ridley is unplugged. I know there's several other celebrities that have unplugged, and they seem to be doing just fine. People take that cue because we have seen time and time and time again the dangers and the pitfalls of social media. It's not that hard. What about you, Jeff? We haven't heard Jeff.
I'm asking because I don't know. I really don't know. The benefits of social media, larger platform, you can reach thousands, millions of people in an instant, but we've seen all the drama that it can create. And since I avoid social media, I question the reporting, and I always question the rush to judgment. I see tweets as screenshots, and I think something came before and something came after. Do we have enough details? Do we have enough context? Christina Ariel, her situation came up. Her questionable / offensive post on social media came before she was a Lucasfilm employee. Was she not vetted by Lucasfilm? And where's the context? Her tweets, they raised my eyebrows. And I thought, wow, even with context, these are rough. These are generalizations, but I can't completely buy in. I can't trust them.
Well, give it 4 days. What you're hearing right now in the moment is one thing, and it will evolve. And as more facts become available, that the truth, as we know it, will change. For example, the January 6th Capitol assault. In the moment when it was happening, the truth was one thing. And then as we move farther away from that, we're, a month and a half out from that now as we record, it's something else. The problem with social media and with the media culture, we tend to hear the first thing and that becomes the thing. How many consumers of media actually go back and reread or check that article or that report or that tweet for accuracy? And the control of what comes at us is being consolidated into fewer and fewer hands, and hands that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with and that I don't trust. It's always good, like Jeff says, is to be skeptical of these things. Also, to go back to something, why do we have social media? Why are celebrities not unplugging? And I think that celebrity in and of itself is an exercise in narcissism. Actors, actresses, musicians, Snoke is a gardener, all these people, right? They all have this narcissism. They're chasing adulation, adoration. They want to be validated for whatever it is they do. And unfortunately, they are suddenly now asked, invited, or otherwise inject themselves into other areas where they are not at the top of their game. And then people are like, oh, and you get 1,000 likes for your sunset photo. Now suddenly you think, hey, I'm popular. People really want to know my opinion on vaccines. Like, well, no, we don't. Please put more pictures of the sunset up. That's what we liked. Yes, social media serves a purpose. Like you say, we use it to promote the show. I use it to promote my art and other, things that I do on the side that are my hobbies. But it's a junior high popularity contest on steroids, and it's really sad, and it's just hard to watch sometimes.
Speech is protected to the point that it becomes harmful to others. So where is the line between free speech and an employer's business interests?
So it all kind of comes down to what company or what business or who you work for, what are their core values? I know that's not necessarily fair, but businesses like Disney have shareholders to take care of. And so if the stock ends up going down because of comments made by an actor or a producer or a director or a CEO, then that person's probably not going to be there very long because you do not want your stock to drop. And unfortunately, if you make the choice to not fall in line with their core values, then there could be some consequences down the line with the morality clause that more than likely she signed. Or, she's not the first one that has had this happen too.
The freedom of speech does not mean freedom from speech or freedom from offense. And my rights don't end where your fears begin. I'm a private citizen. I work for a company and I've signed certain documents, but we should be able to, as citizens of this great nation, to engage in true freedom of thought, conscience, and speech. That is not a fireable offense. But if you were, as David says, to have a morality clause or whatever you want to call it, if Disney is a company that says, hey, we primarily trade in children's entertainment and we have theme parks that are family oriented and we want families to come and bring their children and do a thing, right? And this is what we're about. We're the Mouse House. Great. Anything you do that contradicts that as an employee that brings question or ill repute upon the brand, then you might have a case in a court of law to terminate someone's employment. But an adult talking about adult things, and I don't mean adult in the adult way, but like adult, like grown up, should not be restricted in their speech. I ask people this all the time. Okay, whatever it is that you're saying, like, oh, we should totally deplatform this person, right? We should take away their Twitter and shut them down, and they're such a bastard. Okay, well, I'll say to them, like, well, who's your favorite person? Like your favorite celebrity or favorite sports person? Like, who's your person? And they'll say, oh, so-and-so. And I say, okay, well, now just tell me that whole statement that you just said and just put that person's name in there instead of the person you hate. And you tell me, does that feel like a good idea to you? And this is where I go back to, let's not have the double standard, and let's not live in fear. To be afraid of free thinking, to be afraid of questioning, to be afraid of the pursuit of ideas and intellectual curiosity. But what we're saying in the case of Gina Carano is we want to take that away and we want to regress.
What should we take away from this moment? What will be the impact on Star Wars? What will be the impact on Lucasfilm?
I just think it's a very slippery slope that they have really started to go down. I would really like to know what other things that she's done, because if it's just the social media stuff, then it is definitely politically motivated, I believe. That's not how you should necessarily run the business, because when you start doing serious editing like this, you're going to handcuff people to do films or TV shows and things like that. And I think it's going to make the overall product less desirable. It's going to make it a lot more difficult, I think, for Disney. I think this is a bad decision. But on the flip side, I mean, at what point as an employer do you say enough is enough? We are not privy to all the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, we're getting probably like third-hand information as to what is actually gone down. I don't know. I find it really hard to believe in today's society that they didn't vet her, go through all of her social media information and go through all of her past history and really get a good idea of her beliefs. And I think that's one of the toughest things to kind of grasp is everybody does background checks. And giving somebody like Gina Carano a role in a prominent series, and the fact that it's Star Wars, you would think that they would vet her. Otherwise, you don't hire her. But granted, people can change and then start going off the rail. And I'm not talking about Gina, I'm just talking about in general. And then I guess you just have to deal with it.
Star Wars is now being sullied and mired in the muck of day-to-day politics. We can no longer escape politics. The politics is bleeding into our pastimes and bleeding into our respite from politics. And cancel culture is this thing where you have a class of technocrats, basically, whose job is nothing more than to find things that they disagree with and then rally a large group of internet followers to ruin that group or that company or that person. But when we look at the numbers and we think about this, that little Twitter war that's going on is such a minuscule sliver. It's really mind-boggling that we put so much faith and so much value or so much import into MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, you name it. They all like lead their show with what's trending on the tweets. Really? Like 5 people in California are somehow driving world opinion on anything and everything. And we can't blur that line. We can't say me as a private person doing something or saying something reflects on my employer, because now what you're doing is you're saying to employers is you're saying you're only going to be able to hire people that you agree with. Cancel culture creeps in and starts destroying these companies. Now we are removing people from the ability to engage in society. I can't go get a job at this company anymore. They don't hire people like me because I believe a certain way. That's a very scary thing, that people need to be vetted for their beliefs before we give them jobs. You have to be very careful that that doesn't roll into some kind of civil rights violation. And depending on the type of discrimination and how it is overtly or covertly manifested, you're doing more damage to your organization than good. And we're now starting to, again, blur this line, and it freaks me out But the other question that Jeff asked is about the effect on Disney and the effect that this decision will have. Well, I've canceled my Disney Plus subscription, and I also canceled a bunch of pre-orders for toys from various online retailers. Now, Disney's decision has offended me, and not because of who Gina Carano is politically, but their behavior is so hypocritical. And but I'm a Star Wars fan. We've talked about this on other shows. Please like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. But we've talked about this on other shows. We're lifelong Star Wars fans. We were there at the beginning, and this franchise means a lot to us. And maybe the feedback will be heard at the Disney Lucasfilm headquarters. Perhaps changes will be made in policy. Maybe even changes will be made in leadership. Who knows? But we get to the point now where cancel culture is denying anyone choice and denying anyone freedom of expression. Will I still be a Star Wars fan? Absolutely. Star Wars was a thing for me long before Disney ever showed up in this drama in 2012. I will continue to engage in the franchise, and I will continue to be a fan of the material, and I will continue to talk about it. But that to me is what the ultimate impact will be on this whole situation for Disney.
Our discussion has come to an end. Thank you, David.
Move along.
Thank you, Sean.
There's no all-powerful force controlling my destiny.
It's sad that we Star Wars enthusiasts find ourselves at this point. I trust the fan base, but I'm concerned about extremists with social and political agendas that seek to divide and marginalize. Let us not lose sight of what we have in common, the things that unite us. There are far more of those things than the extremists want us to recognize.
Galactic Initiative is not authorized or endorsed by Lucasfilm Limited. The name Star Wars and all related materials are registered trademarks of Lucasfilm Limited, a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, all rights reserved. Galactic Initiative is a registered trademark, and other product and company names are trademarks of their respective holders. Use does not imply affiliation or endorsement.